More than 2,000 schools in Nigeria, Cameroon, Chad and Niger remain closed due to the conflict. Hundreds in northeast Nigeria, though, have reopened in recent months. In Cameroon's far north region, only one school out of the 135 closed in 2014 has reopened this year. Insecurity and fear of violence prevents many teachers from resuming classes. Parents, too, are discouraged from sending their children back to school. Authorities now fear the children are now at greater risks of being abused, abducted and even recruited by armed groups. Displaced teachers have volunteered to teach, but the numbers of school-going children are overwhelming. Leslie Marungu, CCTV.
Now to discuss this situation further with us, we're now joined live from Lagos, Nigeria by CCTV's Deji Badmus. Deji, more than 1 million children out of school is quite a worrying figure. What more can you tell us about that?
Well, first of all, the report by the United Nations is what we've always known, that quite a number of children are out of school, especially in the northeast of the country, because, you know, the philosophy of Boko Haram has always been, first and foremost, to destroy everything related to Western education. And so in the beginning of its operation, Boko Haram basically targeted schools, destroying several of them. Remember the Chibok girls, for instance, and the one that happened in Yobe State where about 59 schoolboys were killed. So it's actually a terrible situation. It is true that some schools are now reopening in the northeast of the country. Of course, about 400, as we heard in that report, have now reopened. But of course, the challenge is getting these children back to school. To convince parents to send their children back to school is a very, very difficult task. And, you know, the reason is not far-fetched. Boko Haram may not be holding onto territories as we speak, but it is still carrying out suicide bombings. If it had the opportunity, it would still target schools. So not until you have a situation where the security situation in that part of the country is completely stabilized, it will be very difficult for parents to send their children back to school. You also have that situation of the Chibok girls. For as long as these girls continue to remain missing, some parents will definitely not have that confidence to send their children back to school. So that is the most difficult challenge that the government is trying to deal with. Even though about 400 schools have been reopened, getting to convince children and their parents to go, parents especially, to send their children back to school, it's a very difficult challenge. And of course, the UN report highlighted that enormously for everyone to see. And well, the Nigerian government is trying its best. The Borno State government is trying its best, but to be candid, it's surely not going to be an easy task. It will take a long time to get the people, especially parents in that region, to completely agree to send their children back to school.
Now, Deji, once again, the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says that children out of school are exposed to dangers, including abuses. What measures has the Nigerian government put in place to ensure that children are out of danger or get back to school as soon as possible?
Well, the Nigerian government has actually put a lot in place. Let's talk about the schools, for instance. The schools that have been reopened, the 400 of them. It's not as if these schools are just allowed to be on their own. As a matter of fact, each school now has you have security officials guarding the schools, you have soldiers guarding the schools to ensure that the schools are not attacked. And there's what is called the Safe School Initiative as well, that the government and of course the former British Prime Minister is actually anchoring. That Safe School Initiative is still on. In Chibok, for instance, through that initiative, the school in Chibok has been rebuilt. Most of the schools that have been reopened now have been fenced, and the government is trying as much as possible through traditional leaders now to convince parents to send their children back to school. And but of course, as I said before, it's surely not going to be an easy thing. But in terms of whether the government is doing much, the government has done much. Not just the federal government, even the Borno State government itself has provided enormously in terms of ensuring that these schools are safe and that you know, teachers are available. Of course, you also have that challenge of some teachers refusing to go back to school to teach. But provisioning, the Borno State government, for instance, we know provides children with food just to encourage them to come back to school and to encourage parents to send their children back to school. But there's no question at all that, look, it would take time. It would take some time, especially when you have these occasional bombings, bomb attacks by Boko Haram. Other than the bomb attacks, you also have situations where once in a while you hear Boko Haram running over some villages that are not well protected, villages that had been liberated before but not well protected. So when you have incidents like this, it definitely will be difficult to send these children back to school. I mean, to get the parents to send them back to school. That's how difficult the situation is. But there's no question at all that the Nigerian government is doing all it can to convince parents and to make sure schools are safe and provide the necessary facilities to convince, you know, children and their parents to return to school.
Deji, thank you very much for speaking to us here on Africa Live. That was CCTV's Deji Badmus joining us live from Lagos, Nigeria.